In 1933, 1 in 4 American men had no work, and the warmest room in a lot of towns wasn't a house. It was a church basement. Down those wooden steps, under bare bulbs and steam pipes, the Ladies' Aid kept a kettle going and nobody asked what you could pay. These 25 meals came out of those basements. Dishes built from cornmeal, day-old bread, and whatever the collection plate could stretch to. Some of them are strange now. Some of them are shocking. Number 14 was made entirely without the ingredient it was named for, and number 6 didn't have a single egg in it. Every one of them fed people who had nothing, and every one of them has almost completely vanished from American tables. Which forgotten meal tops the list? Let's begin our countdown with number 25. Number 25, water pie. Water pie was exactly what its name promised, and that was the whole point. A pie shell, a scattering of flour and sugar, a few pats of butter or margarine if any could be spared, a splash of vanilla, and then poured right over the top, a cup and a half of plain tap water. Into the oven it went, looking like a mistake. It came out set, translucent, faintly custardy, a dessert conjured out of almost literal nothing. Church cooks made it when the milk money was gone and the hens had quit laying, which in a hard winter was most of the time. Children sat on the basement steps waiting for it to cool, and nobody told them what was in it. Sugar cost about 6 cents a pound in 1932, and that pie fed 8. Today it survives only in penciled margins of old recipe boxes, a reminder that faith and flour could be stretched about equally far. Number 24, milk toast. Milk toast was the meal you made for the sick, the very old, and the very young, and in the worst years, for everybody. Bread was toasted dark, torn into a bowl, and drowned in hot milk with a shake of salt and a lump of butter, if there was butter. That was supper. Church basements served it after evening services because it was cheap, hot, and it went down easy for people who hadn't eaten properly in days. A loaf ran about 8 cents in 1933, and a quart of milk around 10 cents, which meant a whole family could be fed for less than a nickel apiece. The bread went soft and swollen, sweet with nothing but the milk itself, and mothers spooned it into children too tired to chew. It was invalid food that became everyday food. That's how you knew the times had turned. Number 23, cornmeal mush and fried mush. Cornmeal was the cheapest calorie in America, and church basements ran on it. The Ladies' Aid stirred meal into salted boiling water until it went thick enough to hold a spoon upright, then poured half of it out as hot mush with a drizzle of molasses. The other half went into a bread pan overnight, set up solid as a brick, and got sliced and fried in bacon grease the next morning until the edges turned lace crisp and brown. 2 meals from one pot. A 25-pound sack of cornmeal cost around 50 cents and could feed a family for weeks. Children remembered the smell of it frying more vividly than they remembered Christmas. In the South, it was breakfast, dinner, and supper. And in the Midwest, it was what you ate when the wheat money went to the bank. Nothing was cheaper, and nothing kept more people alive. Number 22, dandelion greens with hot bacon dressing. In April, when the root cellar was empty and the garden hadn't come in, the churchyard itself became the pantry. Congregations sent children out with paring knives to cut dandelion crowns before they flowered and turned bitter. The greens came back in bushel baskets, got washed 3 times in cold water, and were wilted at the table under a dressing of hot bacon grease, vinegar, a spoonful of sugar, and a crumble of whatever bacon ends the butcher had thrown in for free. The leaves collapsed in the heat, sharp and green and alive after a winter of cornmeal and beans. Grown men who'd eaten nothing but starch since November said it tasted like medicine in the best possible way, and they weren't wrong, since those greens carried the vitamins. ones that kept spring sickness away. We poison them out of our lawns now. Our great-grandparents fought over the tender ones. Number 21, Hoover stew. Named with a bitterness you could taste, Hoover stew was the meal that told you exactly how bad things had gotten. Into the biggest kettle went macaroni, canned tomatoes, whatever beans were in the cupboard, and sliced hot dogs. The cheapest meat in the country at about 10 cents a pound. It simmered until the pasta went soft and the tomatoes turned the whole pot orange. And it fed a church hall of 30 for under $1. Nobody pretended it was good. Men in Hoovervilles and church basements alike ate it in silence. And the name itself was the joke. A president's name attached to macaroni and hot dogs. The way his name got attached to newspaper blankets and empty pockets turned inside out. It filled you. It got you to tomorrow. And when the war came and the jobs came back, America dropped that stew so fast, it's a wonder anyone remembers the name at all. Number 20, peanut butter bread. There's no butter in it, no eggs, and almost no fat except what the peanuts brought themselves. Church cooks stirred a cup of peanut butter straight into flour, sugar, baking powder, and milk, poured it into a loaf pan, and baked it into something dense, tender, and quietly rich. It sliced like cake but ate like bread, and it carried protein into children who hadn't seen meat in a week. Peanut butter was the miracle of the era, cheap, shelf-stable, and so calorie-dense that home demonstration agents pushed it in every pamphlet they printed. A jar cost around $0.25 and turned into 3 loaves. The basement smelled like roasted peanuts and warm sugar, and the ladies cut it in thick slabs with no apology and no spread. It was a dessert, a lunch, and a nutrition program all at once. Today it sounds like a novelty. Then it was strategy. Number 19, Rivel soup. Pennsylvania Dutch congregations kept this one going through the worst of it, and it required exactly 3 things: flour, an egg, and boiling milk or broth. You rubbed the flour and egg between your palms until it crumbled into rough little pellets, rivels meaning lumps, and dropped them into the simmering pot where they swelled into soft dumplings the size of rice grains. Sometimes there was corn in it. Sometimes there was nothing but the rivels. It was on the stove in 20 minutes. It cost pennies, and it turned 1 single egg into supper for 6 people. Children stood at the counter helping rub the flour, which is why so many people over 90 can still make it without a recipe and can't tell you where they learned. The pot was thick, pale, and steaming. It asked nothing of you but a handful of flour and a little patience. Number 18, tomato gravy over biscuits. Southern church basements lived on this. A spoonful of bacon grease in the skillet, a scatter of flour stirred until it went the color of a paper bag. Then a quart jar of home-canned tomatoes poured in, hissing and broken up with the back of a spoon. Salt, pepper, maybe a pinch of sugar to take the edge off. It went over split biscuits, and it went over everything, and it turned a jar of last August's garden into a hot meal in the dead of February. Families who canned 200 quarts of tomatoes in the summer heat weren't being ambitious. They were being accurate about what winter was going to cost them. The gravy came out pink-orange, sharp and salty, clinging to the biscuit crumb. Fathers ate it before dawn shifts. Nobody called it poverty food. They called it breakfast, and they meant it kindly. Number 17, poor man's meal. 3 ingredients, 1 skillet, no ambition whatsoever. Potatoes were diced small, so they'd cook fast and stretch far, fried with sliced onion in whatever grease the jar held, and then sliced hot dogs went in at the end to brown at the edges. That was it. That was the whole meal, and it fed a family of 5 for about 10 cents. Church basements made it in cast iron the size of wagon wheels, and the smell of frying onion pulled people down the stairs before the announcement was even made. It has no sauce, no seasoning beyond salt and pepper, and no pretense. But there's a reason it's the dish people from that generation described most often when asked what they actually ate. It was hot, it was filling, and it was on the table before the kids stopped complaining. Convenience and hardship met in the same pan, and hardship cooked it better. Number 16. Cabbage and noodles. Polish, Hungarian, and Slovak parishes in the steel towns kept the pot going on this one, and it converted the two cheapest things in America into something people genuinely loved. A whole head of cabbage, around 3 cents in 1934, was shredded and cooked down slow in butter or lard until it collapsed and caramelized, going sweet and golden and nothing like the boiled cabbage that gave the dish its reputation. Then egg noodles, made by hand on a floured table that morning, got folded in with a heavy hand of black pepper. That was supper for 20. The basements of Milltown churches smelled of it every Friday, and men coming off shift ate it out of enamel bowls with their coats still on. It was meatless, which mattered on Fridays, and it was enormous, which mattered every other day. Cheap, hot, and quietly, stubbornly delicious. Number 15. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Salted, dried, paper-thin beef came in a jar for around 15 cents, and a single jar could feed a dozen people because the meat wasn't the meal. The white sauce was. Church cooks made a roux with flour and drippings, whisked in milk until it thickened, then tore the beef in and let the salt do the seasoning. It went over toast, over biscuits, over leftover cornmeal mush. The soldiers who ate it in the war a decade later gave it a nickname that got it banned from polite conversation. But in a 1935 church basement, it wasn't a joke. It was salt and protein and hot cream sauce on a night when the wind came under the door. Mothers stretched one jar across a week by adding hard-boiled egg and more milk each time. It got thinner. Nobody said a word about it. Number 14. Mock apple pie. Here's the one that sounds impossible. No apples. Not one. Instead, broken soda crackers were layered into a pie shell and drowned in a syrup of water, sugar, cream of tartar, lemon, and cinnamon, then baked until the crackers softened, swelled, and, this is the strange part, turned into something the eye and the tongue both read as apple. The cream of tartar supplied the tartness. The crackers supplied the texture. Your brain supplied the rest. Church socials served it in orchard country during winters, when the apple barrels had gone soft and brown, and grown women who'd baked apple pie their whole lives admitted they couldn't tell the difference under the lattice. The recipe was old, older than the Depression, dating back to pioneer wagons, but it came roaring back when fruit got expensive. It is the purest proof on this list that our great-grandparents understood cooking as chemistry, not shopping. Number 13. Vinegar pie. The other impossible dessert, and the one that divides people to this day. Sugar, flour, water, a beaten egg, a spoonful of butter, and the part that makes modern people flinch, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. It baked into a golden custard that tasted, against all reason, like lemon. That was the whole trick. Lemons cost real money and traveled 1,000 miles, but vinegar sat in every pantry in America for pennies, and the acid did the same work on the palate. Frontier cooks knew it, Depression cooks remembered it. Church ladies brought it to funerals because it kept without refrigeration and cost almost nothing to make for a grieving family. Children ate it without knowing, and adults ate it knowing exactly, and both cleaned the plate. It has vanished now, chased out by cheap citrus. But the pie was never about lemons. It was about knowing what acid does. Number 12. Salmon croquettes. A can of pink salmon cost about 10 cents, and church cooks made it feed 12. The fish was dumped out, bones, skin, and all, because the bones were soft and full of calcium, and throwing them away was unthinkable. Then mashed with cracker crumbs or leftover mashed potato, a beaten egg, minced onion, and a shake of pepper, shaped into patties, and fried in a skillet until the outsides went deep brown and crackling. Served with white sauce or a wedge of lemon, or, most often, nothing at all. Coastal parishes and landlocked Nebraska farm towns made the identical dish because canned salmon was one of the few proteins that reached everywhere in America at a price everyone could reach. The smell filled the basement and reached the parking lot. It was Friday food, funeral food, and hard times food, and it did all three jobs perfectly. Number 11. Corn chowder with saltines. When the ham bone was gone and the beans were gone, there was still corn. Canned or cut off the cob and frozen in a snowbank, it went into a pot with diced potato, onions softened in bacon fat, milk, and a great deal of black pepper. That was the whole architecture: starch, dairy, and one salty ghost of pork. The church ladies thickened it by crushing saltines directly into the bowls, which stretched the pot, and used up the broken crackers at the bottom of the box, because the bottom of the box was still food. It came out thick, pale, and steaming, and it stuck to your ribs the way nothing else in the basement did. A pot cost maybe 40 cents and fed 30 people. Men who'd been standing in a relief line since 6 in the morning came down those stairs for it and didn't look up until the bowl was empty. Number 10. Apple Brown Betty. Every orchard state had windfalls, bruised, spotted apples that could not be sold and could not be stored, free for the gathering. Church basements turned them into Brown Betty by the roasting pan. Sliced apples layered with buttered breadcrumbs, brown sugar, cinnamon, and a squeeze of lemon, baked until the top went crunchy and the fruit underneath collapsed into something between sauce and jam. It used stale bread, which was the point, and free apples, which was the other point. The recipe appeared in every extension service pamphlet the government printed, held up as the model of thrift. Children hovered at the oven door. The whole basement smelled of cinnamon and hot fruit, which is a smell that can make a hard week feel briefly survivable. Served warm with a thin pour of milk, because cream was for people with money. Nobody in that room had any, and nobody minded. Number 9. Scalloped potatoes and ham. This was the workhorse of the church supper, the dish that showed up at every funeral, every fundraiser, and every night the men's Bible study ran long. Potatoes sliced thin as coins, layered in a deep pan with flour, salt, pepper, dots of butter, and whatever ham scraps could be shaved off a bone that had already made 3 pots of soup. Milk poured over the top until it just showed. Then an hour and a half in a slow oven until the top browned and the milk turned into a sauce all on its own. A dime's worth of potatoes and a bone nobody wanted became dinner for 25. Church cooks fought quietly over technique. Some swore by scalding the milk first, some by parboiling the potatoes, and every one of them was certain her pan was the one that came back empty. Usually they all did. Number 8. Potato soup, the kettle. In 1,000 church basements across the country, there was always a kettle, and more often than not, potato soup was in it. Potatoes, onion, milk, salt, pepper, and a lump of butter floating on top like a small blessing. That was it. No stock, no herbs, nothing that cost money. It simmered from noon until the doors opened, and it went out in whatever containers people brought. Enamel bowls, tin cups, a jar with a lid for the family at home. A 100-pound sack of potatoes ran about $1 in 1932, and that sack, with milk begged from a member's dairy, could feed a congregation for a week. Nobody signed a ledger. Nobody was asked what they did for work, because a lot of them didn't do anything for work anymore. The soup was thin, hot, and white, and it asked no questions. Number 7. Congealed salad. Here's where the church basement developed its signature, and it's the one people mock now without understanding it at all. A box of flavored gelatin cost a nickel and needed no refrigeration to buy, no refrigeration to store, and turned a handful of scraps into a centerpiece. Lime gelatin with shredded cabbage and canned pineapple. Lemon with grated carrot. Cherry with a can of fruit cocktail stretched to serve 20. It came out of a ring mold onto a plate of lettuce, jeweled and trembling and shining under those bare basement bulbs, and it looked like abundance in a room where there was none. That was its entire purpose. It was the cheapest dish on the table and the one that looked like the most expensive. When the first refrigerator arrived on the block, the congealed salads got ambitious. We laugh now. They were performing hope. Number 6, wacky cake. No eggs, no butter, no milk. In 1935, that wasn't a dietary choice. It was a fact of the pantry. So the recipe worked around all three. Flour, sugar, cocoa, salt, and baking soda went straight into the pan. 3 wells were poked into the dry mix. Vinegar in one, vanilla in the second, oil in the third. Cold water poured over everything. A quick stir with a fork and into the oven. The vinegar hit the soda and made the whole thing rise. And it came out dark, moist, and tender. Better, honestly, than half the birthday cakes made with everything. Bowl. No bowl, actually. You mixed it in the pan and washed nothing. Church ladies made it for children whose families couldn't have managed a birthday any other way. It's still called crazy cake, wacky cake, or depression cake, and it's still the best trick on this list. Number 5, oatmeal meatloaf. A pound of hamburger cost around 12 cents, and a pound of hamburger does not feed a church basement. So it got extended. Rolled oats, cheaper than breadcrumbs and already in every cupboard, went in by the cupful, along with a beaten egg, grated onion, canned milk, and a good deal of salt and sage. The oats soaked up the milk and the meat juices and held them there, which is why those loaves came out moist when a pure meatloaf would have come out dry and gray. 1 pound of beef became a loaf that fed 8, with ketchup smeared across the top in the last 10 minutes because ketchup made it look like it meant something. The chemistry was real. The starch trapped moisture the meat would have lost, and church cooks knew it by feel, long before anyone wrote it down. Modern recipes skip the oats. Modern meatloaf is worse. Number 4, bread pudding. Nothing in a Depression kitchen was more sacred than bread, and nothing was more common than bread going stale. So the heels, the crusts, the dried-out ends of loaves nobody would eat plain got torn into a buttered pan, scattered with raisins if raisins existed, and drowned in eggs, milk, sugar, and nutmeg. An hour in the oven turned garbage into custard. Church basements served it at every funeral supper in America, warm, with a thin vanilla sauce poured over, and the sauce was often just milk, sugar, and cornstarch, because that's what a vanilla sauce is when you're honest about it. The top went crisp and burnished, the inside stayed soft and sweet, and the whole room smelled like nutmeg. Women took quiet pride in it precisely because it cost nothing. Waste was the one sin that basement couldn't forgive, and bread pudding was absolution you could eat with a spoon. Number 3, the chili supper. When the church roof leaked and there was no money to fix it, they held a chili supper. 15 cents a bowl, all you could eat. Friday night, everybody come. The chili itself was mostly beans, kidney or pinto, soaked overnight in wash tubs, with a pound or 2 of hamburger browned off and stirred in for flavor rather than substance. Canned tomatoes, onion, and enough chili powder to convince you. It simmered all afternoon in a kettle that normally boiled laundry. Crackers on every table. Cornbread if the ladies' aid was feeling generous. The basement filled with steam and noise and children running between folding chairs. And by 9 o'clock, there'd be enough in the coffee can to buy shingles. It fed the town, and it fixed the building at the same time. It's the most American thing on this list, and it has almost entirely disappeared. Number 2. Chicken and dumplings. A laying hen that had stopped laying was worth exactly one thing, and this was it. She was tough, old, and stringy, and she needed 3 hours in a pot before she would give up. But when she did, that broth was gold. Church cooks pulled the meat off in shreds, kept every scrap of it, and then dropped in dumplings, flour, baking powder, salt, and a little of the fat skimmed off the top, spooned onto the surface and covered tight so the steam did the work. 15 minutes later, they came up doubled, pale, and cloud-like. One old hen fed 30 people because the dumplings did what the chicken could not. It was Sunday food, funeral food, and welcome home food. And the smell of it in a basement stairwell meant somebody had either died or come back. Either way, everyone would be fed. And in first place, number 1, the bean supper, navy beans and cornbread. That's the whole thing, and it kept more Americans alive between 1930 and 1939 than any dish on this list. A 10-pound sack of dried beans cost around 50 cents and never spoiled, never froze, never needed a refrigerator that nobody had. Church ladies soaked them overnight in every pot the parish owned, then simmered them from dawn with an onion, a bay leaf if they were feeling fancy, and one smoked ham hock, a bone with almost nothing on it, bought for a nickel or given free by a butcher who understood exactly what it was for. By afternoon, the beans had gone creamy and thick, the broth gray-brown and smoky, and the whole basement smelled like the only good thing that had happened all week. The cornbread came out of iron skillets, crusted at the edges from the hot grease, cut in wedges, and passed down long tables of mismatched chairs. People crumbled it right into the bowl. Children got seconds without asking. Men who hadn't worked in 14 months sat down and ate and were not, for that 1 hour, anybody's charity case because everybody at that table was eating the same thing. That was the point. A bean supper cost the church about $2 and fed 150 people, and no one could tell who'd paid and who hadn't. It ran in Baptist basements in Alabama and Lutheran basements in Minnesota and Catholic halls in Pittsburgh. The same beans, the same bone, the same dignity. It was the cheapest meal in America and the most important. Across all 25 entries, from water pie at the bottom to the bean supper at the top, these dishes tell one story. That hunger was met not by government warehouses or grocery chains, but by women in a basement with a kettle and a plan. Stale bread, dried beans, cornmeal, and a bone recur in nearly every entry because scarcity, not preference, shaped what America ate. These weren't recipes. They were a system, and it held. Which of these did your grandmother make? Tell me in the comments. I want to know whose family still has the recipe card.